This video is part 3 and the final part of our reimagining of the classic strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in a cyberpunk setting. If you want to see part 1 or 2, the link is in the description of this video. Now, let's go back to the story. Chapter 6, Final Protocol, The Last Night. Mr. Utterson was sitting by his fireside one evening after dinner when he was surprised by a priority override notification on his secure terminal. It was Poole, Dr. Jekyll's android majordomo. When Poole entered, Utterson was shocked. The android, usually a model of sleek, unwavering service, was exhibiting clear signs of systemic distress. His optical sensors were flickering erratically, and his vocal synthesizer held a tremor that sounded disturbingly human. "What is the matter, Poole?" asked the lawyer. "Are your logic stabilizers malfunctioning?" "Mr. Utterson," said the android, "there is something wrong. Take a seat, and here's a glass of wine for you," said the lawyer. "Now, take your time, and tell me plainly what you want." "You know the doctor's ways, sir," replied Poole, ignoring the wine. "And how he shuts himself up. Well, he's shut up again in the cabinet. And I don't like it, sir. I wish I may die if I like it. Mr. Utterson, sir, I am afraid." "Now, my good android," said the lawyer, "be explicit. What are you afraid of?" "I've been afraid for about a week," said Poole, his voice dropping to a static whisper. "And I can bear it no more." The android's distress was contagious. Utterson put on his armored coat without another word, and they went out into the night. It was a wild, dystopian night. A biting wind, heavy with particulate matter, blew through the steel canyons of Neo-London, whipping the rain against the neon signs until the city seemed a blur of streaked light. The wind made talking difficult and gave Utterson a premonition of systemic collapse. When they reached the square where Jekyll lived, the house was dark, save for the fanlight above the main door. Poole applied his thumb to the scanner, and the door slid open. The hall within was brightly lighted. A high-end holographic fireplace was burning, and about the hearth the whole of the servants, human and mechanical alike, were huddled together like a flock of frightened sheep. At the sight of Mr. Utterson, the housemaid broke into hysterical sobbing, and the cook cried out, "Bless God, it's Mr. Utterson," and ran forward as if to take him in her arms. What?" said the lawyer. "Are you all here? This is very irregular, very unoptimized behavior." "They are all afraid," said Poole. Then he signaled for silence. "Now, sir, you come as gently as you can. I want you to hear, and I don't want you to be heard. And see here, sir, if by any chance he was to ask you in, don't go." Utterson's heart gave a jump, but he followed the android through the maze of corridors and out into the rain-lashed yard that led to the laboratory building. They mounted the stair to the red baize door. Poole motioned for Utterson to stand on one side and listen. Then, with an obvious effort, he activated the intercom. "Mr. Utterson is here, sir, and wants to see you," said the android. A voice answered from within. It was a voice that made Utterson's blood run cold. Not because it was loud, but because it was wrong. It sounded synthesized, guttural, heavy with static and desperation. "Tell him I cannot see anyone," said the voice. "Thank you, sir," said Poole, deactivating the comms. He led Utterson back across the yard and into the main kitchen. "Sir," said the android, looking Utterson squarely in the eyes with his glowing optics. "Was that my master's voice?" "It seems much changed," replied the lawyer, pale to the lips. "Changed? Well, yes, I think so," said the butler. "Have I been 20 years in this man's service, to be deceived by his voice pattern? No, sir. My master was deleted 8 days ago, when we heard him cry out to God. And who's in there instead of him, and why it stays there, is a thing that cries to heaven." "This is a very strange tale, Poole. This is a rather wild tale, my machine friend," said Mr. Utterson, biting his finger. "Suppose it were as you suppose. Why should this usurper stay? What does it want?" "Sir, it is crying for chemicals," said Poole. "It is the only thing that comes out of that door, digital requisitions for chemical precursors. All week long, I have been running all over the black market to every illicit farm runner in the sector, hunting for a specific experimental reagent. I bring it back. I leave it outside the door. A few hours later, there's another order on my terminal, desperate, saying the last batch was impure and that I must find the original synth load. It is frantic, sir. Have you seen it? Once, said Poole. I came suddenly into the theater from Garden. It had come out to look for something, perhaps. It was digging among the crates of fiber optics. It looked up when I came in, gave a kind of glitching cry, and whipped upstairs into the cabinet. It was for 1 minute that I saw it, but my processors are still running the image. Sir, if that was my master, why had he a mask upon his face? If it was my master, why did he cry out like a rat and run from me? I have served him long enough. And then, the android paused, his system seeming to shudder. That thing was not Dr. Jekyll, sir. It was small. It moved wrong. It was like looking at a corrupted file, walking in 3 dimensions. Poole, said Utterson, there is something profoundly illegal going on here. It is my duty to break down that door. Ah, Mr. Utterson, that's talking, cried the android. The door is highly secured biometric steel, observed the lawyer. How are we to do it? I have a high-impact industrial breaching tool in the maintenance bay, said Poole. They retrieved the tool, a heavy thermal lance designed for cutting through starship bulkheads. They returned to the yard. The wind was still howling, but the laboratory was silent. Utterson hailed the door once more. Jekyll, he cried loudly, I demand to see you. He waited a moment, then gave fair warning. If you do not open to the biometric scan, I shall use force. Utterson, said the voice, and now the lawyer knew it was the voice of Hyde, thin, reedy, and vicious. For God's sake, have mercy. Ah, that's not Jekyll's voice. It's the glitch, cried Utterson. Breach the door, Poole. Poole activated the thermal lance. A blinding white light flared as the tip melted into the steel hinges. The door groaned, metal screaming against heat. It took 3 sustained burns, the lance whining with power, before the locks melted into slag. With a final, unified shove by man and machine, the red baize door crashed inwards onto the carpet. The besiegers, appalled by their own violence and the stillness that followed, stood back and peered in. The cabinet was quiet. The holographic fire was still burning. A lamp was singing thinly on the table. Papers were neatly set forth on the business table, and near the fire, the things laid out for tea. The quietest room, you would have said, in Neo-London. But right in the middle of the floor, there lay the body of a man, sorely contorted and still twitching slightly. They drew near on tiptoe, turned it on its back, and beheld the face of Edward Hyde. He was dressed in clothes far too large for him, clothes of the doctor's bigness. The fibers of his expensive smart suit hung loose on his shrunken frame. In his hand, he clutched a shattered glass phial, which smelled strongly of bitter almonds, a cyanide capsule, the ultimate system crash. He has terminated his own process, said Utterson solemnly. We have come too late whether to save or punish. Hyde is gone to his account, and it only remains for us to find the body of your master. They searched the entire laboratory building. They checked the server racks, the chemical storage bays, even the exhaust vents. Nowhere was there any trace of Henry Jekyll, dead or alive. Finally, they returned to the cabinet. On the business table, Utterson found a large data slate containing several files. The first was a will, drawn in the same eccentric terms as the one he had returned 6 months before, to serve as a testament in case of death and as a deed of gift in case of disappearance. But in place of the name of Edward Hyde, the lawyer, with indescribable amazement, read the name of Gabriel John Utterson. The second was a short digital note in the doctor's hand. Utterson read it with a sudden sinking of the heart. My dear Utterson, when this shall fall into your hands, I shall have disappeared. Under what circumstances I have not the penetration to foresee, but my instinct and all the circumstances of my nameless situation tell me that the end is sure and must be early. Go then, and read the narrative which Lanyon warned me he was to place in your hands. And if you care to hear more, access the encrypted file on this slate labeled confession. Poole, said Utterson, pocketing the data slate. I will go home to read these documents in quiet, but I shall be back before midnight, when we shall send for the authorities." They went out, locking the door of the laboratory behind them, leaving the dead glitch lying among the high-tech ruin of its creator's dreams. If you've been following the story this far, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video to help me spread this new way of telling stories. Now, let's go back to the story. Chapter 7, The Root Access Log, Henry Jekyll's Confession. Decrypting file, 100% complete. Author, H. Jekyll, admin. Subject, error report and final statement. I was born in the year 20XX, heir to a great corporate fortune, endowed with excellent cognitive implants, and inclined by nature to industry and progress. Everyone who saw me in the high-tier towers guaranteed me an honorable and distinguished future. And indeed, the worst of my faults was merely a cheerful impatience, a desire to experience the sensory pleasures that the rigidity of my social class forbade. So, early on, I concealed my pleasures. I created a firewall between my public life, the brilliant scientist, the austere philanthropist, and my private desires. Over time, I realized that this duplicity was not mine alone. It was the fundamental condition of modern man. Man is not truly one, but two. He is the user, the moral conscience, the social facade, and the avatar, the impulses, the hunger, the violence. And I, as a man of science, decided that if these two identities could be separated, life would be relieved of all that is unbearable. The unjust could go his way, delivering crimes without remorse. The just could walk steadfastly on his virtuous path, untempted by the flaws of his dark twin. I did not want to destroy man. I wanted to debug him. I wanted to refactor the code of the human soul. The compilation, I acquired the chemical precursors on the black market and programmed the dissociative nanobots. On that fateful night, I watched the mixture fume in the test tube, turning from red to toxic green. I drank it. The pain was atrocious. I felt as if my bones were being ground by gears, a deadly nausea and a horror of the spirit that cannot be exceeded at the hour of birth or death. Then the agony subsided. I felt something new. I felt younger, lighter, happier in my body. I felt an intoxicating freedom, a mental recklessness. I knew, in that moment, that I was no longer Henry Jekyll. I ran to the mirror. There he was, Edward Hyde. He was smaller, stockier. Why? Because the evil side of my nature was less developed, less exercised than the good side. Jekyll was a complex construction of years of study and effort. Hyde was pure instinct. He was a glitch in the human matrix. Everyone who looked at him felt repulsion, for they saw in him the deformity of pure evil without the mask of civilization. But I did not feel repulsion. I felt a welcome. I was looking at myself. The infinite loop. You know the rest? Utter sun. The crimes. The freedom. I, Jekyll, could wake up in the morning with a clean conscience, while Hyde had spent the night beating innocents in the streets of the low tier. I was the first man in history to commit crimes and, with a simple antidote, make the culprit vanish like smoke. But the code began to fail. The first time was spontaneous. I went to sleep as Jekyll in my secure bed and woke up seeing the hairy, scarred hand of Hyde on the sheets. Terror consumed me. Hyde's software was overriding Jekyll's operating system. I was losing administrator control. I tried to stop. For 2 months, I was virtuous. But the addiction to freedom is the strongest of all. In a moment of weakness, I took the serum again. And this time, the demon came out roaring, furious at having been caged. It was on that night that I killed Sir Danvers Carew. That act of violence was not planned. It was a buffer overflow, a release of accumulated kinetic energy. The fatal error. Now we come to the end. The cause of the disaster was not moral. It was technical. The original batch of the chemical salt I used in the first experiment was impure. There was some unknown trace, some rare contaminant in those old chemical reserves that was, in fact, the crucial active ingredient. When my stock ran out, I ordered more. The new product was chemically pure, and therefore useless. I have spent this last week screaming for Poole, sending him to every pharmacy in Neo-London. Vine. The mixture does not work. I am trapped. The last effective dose dissipated hours ago. I am writing this with Jekyll's hand, but I feel the change coming. I feel the itch under the skin, the clicking of joints. Hyde is returning, and this time it will be permanent. Jekyll will die, and what remains will be only the monster, cornered in this room, howling with fear of the gallows. In a moment, my handwriting will change. My mind will fragment. Utterson, when you read this, Henry Jekyll will no longer exist. What you find on the floor, holding the cyanide vial, will not be me. It will be the other. Will he kill himself? I do not know. Hyde loves life with an animal intensity, and he fears death more than anything. But he knows the door will give way. The door is shaking. I hear the hum of Poole's thermal lance. It is the end. I will close the file now. I will disconnect. Goodbye. Connection terminated. System offline. With this, we conclude the adaptation of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde into the cyberpunk universe. This version maintained the soul of the original tragedy, the idea that technology, whether chemical or digital, does not create new demons. It merely releases those that already live within us. Jekyll believed he could use technology to become pure. Hyde proved that purity without morality is merely chaos. Utterson and Lanyon represent society attempting to process this new reality, failing to comprehend that the monster did not come from outside, but from within. And that's how this video ends too. Thanks for watching. See you next time.